Good job.
I
Nailed it.
figured for sure Coastal was going to say on 2 at some point during that run-up.
No, I don't want to keep us here all night. I know people have babies, and I have a snowstorm and whatnot.
Snowstorm.
It's similar to a baby, right? Is that how babies work?
Yep.
You got to shovel them occasionally.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
Fair enough.
You just sit inside and watch Netflix and wait for the baby to be over.
The sun to come out and warm everything up, and the baby's done.
Yeah, so just prepare to.
It'll be great.
It'll be perfect. Yeah, so just prepare to.
Y'all motherfuckers don't watch us play throughout the year, to tell you the truth. I'm gonna be real with you, and I don't care if I get fined.
That train is off the track.
I feel like you can't just like jump through Neptune and be okay.
Just prepare to.
What the show needs is more dogs and bears and chickens and stuff.
Yeah, so just prepare to be awash in unbeatable goodness.
Welcome, Pacers fans. You are listening to the Undebeatables, your semi-weekly Pacers podcast. This is episode 566, coming to you from the high school home of Jamison Brewer, Silver Spring, Maryland. I'm your host this week, Jason Triplett. This show, we're going to discuss our anxieties as Pacer fans, and we'll do a stat of the week, and we'll answer an ungoogleable. Joining me to do this are two of our analysts, coast to coast, like butter toast. First, from Asheville, North Carolina, he's our in-house bartender, mixing up the drinks and the crappy jingles, John Colson.
What is up, Undebeatables? What is up, Pacer Nation? I am still locked in a basement in a snowstorm. So what I want you to know is that I haven't forgotten about you.
Thanks.
It's been days. Should we send help?
Yeah, exactly. Do you have
Potentially.
enough rations?
Oh yeah,
Regimes?
I've got at least 3 more bottles of wine. I'll be fine.
Okay, good. And from Boise, Idaho, out west, it's our enforcer, John Harper.
What is going on, fellas?
Not much. I think the show is slated to come out on January 20th, which I believe is the anniversary of the first episode of the Undebeatables.
Oh my goodness.
Yes, exactly. So shout out to you guys, and shout out to Joey, who we are missing this week dearly, who without his participation, this would never have ever gotten off the ground.
This was his plan.
So, yes.
And it's his fault.
So before we start the show, we want to remind you you can support us a couple ways. We always do the spiel about Patreon. You can go to patreon.com/undebeatables. Subscribe for as low as $1 a month. Every little bit helps. And you can also support us every time you shop at Amazon. It doesn't cost you any extra money. Just follow the link in the show notes or go to theundebeatables.com/Amazon and they'll send us a cut of whatever you spend, which is great for us. Okay, so this week, Colson said, just turn it over to me. I got it under control. I'm going to do a thing. So that's what I'm doing right now. Colson, you want to talk about your anxieties about the Pacers, which I thought we've been doing for 565 episodes, but...
Okay, fair enough.
Okay.
I part of it was that I was like, hey, look, this is apparently the 9th anniversary of our show, and I wanted to pay tribute to what this show was about. The reason that Joey wanted to make this a podcast is because the 4 of us would sit around, at the end of the night, having some beers, and we'd, after we'd caught up on our lives, we'd talk about what's going on with the Pacers. And I think on some level, this show should just be that basic. I don't. I have said this stat numerous times, and I'm going to say it one more time. But since 1991, the Pacers are more likely to make the Eastern Conference Finals than they are to miss the playoffs. We are now in a situation where we're going to miss the playoffs. And so as my friends, not as my fellow podcasters, but as my friends, I would call you and I would be worried about it and I would want to talk about what the issues are. And so I think what I want to do is just on a very basic, strip down the whole thing. Let's not come up with topics. It's not about that. This podcast isn't about topics. It's about us hanging out on the phone. And here's the deal. Or let's sit around a beer and talking about what's going on with the Pacers. And my issue right now is it doesn't seem like any of the guys that we thought were blue chippers are blue chippers. The only joy we've had this season is bringing back Lance Stevenson. So what are you doing as a fan? I mean, we've been doing this for so long. I'm talking about podcasting. I mean, we've been fans for so long that, like, we have to find ways to keep doing this.
Yeah, I mean, this has been admittedly a very tough season to watch this team. And I don't know what keeps pulling me back. I guess just habit is what pulls me back. I've been doing this for the vast majority of my life. And yeah, we root for Laundry. I still want to see these guys do well. I suppose that what interests me right now is sort of the dynamics on the floor as these guys are being shopped around the trade block. Like I have been trying to pick up sort of what the interactions and vibes are between sort of the players amongst themselves and between Carlisle and the players. And like, does he seem chummy with anybody? Like, are there, people nearly coming to blows or anything like that? We haven't seen a lot of that. There was, I forget who was involved, but Sabonis and I think it was LeVert got into a shouting match a while back.
But that seemed healthy to me. It seemed like more better than worse, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree. I was, heartened. I think it was in one of the Boston games last week. There was a moment where LeVert and Carlisle were hanging out on the sidelines, and they seemed to be sort of joking and jocular and whatnot, and having a plan, which I thought was good. So it's those kind of things, I guess, that keep me engaged. Is sort of, how are these guys doing? Like, how are mentally, how do they handle this situation, right? Because we as Pacer fans, I don't have a lot of experience like watching a shitty team. I really don't. I've definitely had seasons, and they've been recorded for posterity's sake, where I just said, this team is decent, but like, I am bored with them, so I'm not going to watch. I know exactly what's going to happen, so I'm just.
But that
tuning
team
out
still made the
from-
playoffs, though.
Absolutely, right. So
Right.
like, and we've had teams that have missed the playoffs that I was much more engaged with, right?
Right.
That I, the year after Paul George broke his leg, that team was really fun to root for because they were out there fighting every night and scrapping and like almost getting it done. It is few and far between that you're rooting for a team that has a losing record, even, right? So, sort of seeing how those guys deal with it is kind of interesting. And I mean, by and large, they come with their lunch pail and like are, show up fighting. I think they do. I mean, I think that the attitude on their faces is pretty good. I think they don't have confidence that they're going to win, but they're going to try. Like, they're not going to not try. They're all professionals, I think, is what I've taken away from this. You have a disgusted look on your face.
No, I think they're.
Agree with that.
No, I think they're professionals. I don't think that they. I mean, the reason Lance Stevenson is interesting, right, is because he's a little bit crazy and he's a little bit nasty, and I think we have a full team of professionals who are just going to go out and do their business. And you don't win games, go out and do your business. You go out and take the game. You go out and win the game. And I feel like that's why I got inspired by Lance being a part of this. And he's not a good enough player to suddenly be better than, to be like the third best player on our team, but that's what he's become. Like, that's a problem. We picked him up off the scrap heap, and like he's now like our third best player. Like, I have problems with the fact that we have Sykes and Washington Jr. and these guys give a shit, and suddenly, we're competitive. Like, when you say that they're, but look, these guys are actually playing hard. We're still losing,
Absolutely,
but like I don't
right?
feel like I've seen this team passionate all season.
But of
And
course,
that's
those
been
guys
my
are playing
issue.
hard. Like, this is the classic argument for people that like college sports versus the pros, because the college guys care or whatever, and so they're passionate, they play hard, like blah blah blah. Of course, Kiefer Sykes and Gummy Bear are playing hard. They're playing for their NBA lives, right? Like, they can't not go out and play hard, and that doesn't mean that the other guys aren't bringing their hard hat to work and like doing their.
They're bringing their
Their
lunch
thing.
pail, but are they like sacrificing themselves to win an NBA game? No. They're bringing their lunch pail and they're going to work and then they're going home. And we have a
Okay.
team full
Yeah,
of those
I agree
guys.
with that. Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. I'm not saying that they're like they lack
Like, they
all
haven't
identity
completely
or
checked
effort.
out, right? Like,
No.
it's that's what's
But-
kind of interesting about this team.
But
is they're
there's not enough passion.
right. Yeah. They haven't checked out, but they're also not like, there's no sense of desperation.
Yeah.
Right.
They're just not a very emotional bunch, it doesn't seem like.
I don't know, Harper. What do you do? Why do you watch? Maybe you don't anymore.
I feel like I have to because I have this podcast thing.
See, this is the thing. This is not what it's about. We do it because we love it, and we just would talk about it on the phone. You don't have to watch this.
Are you
for the-
mirroring the Pacers right now? You're just coming and doing the podcast just because it's
Just going through the motion.
it's a paycheck. Yeah.
It's a paycheck. It's a very small paycheck.
Yeah. I mean, this, the past several weeks have been, uninteresting, right? I mean, now, like, the only, like, you figure you're going to go and lose every game. Like, we've been joking, Now the only question is, what new and creative way will we find to drop these games? I mean, it's normally some version of a 10-0 run, This week it was sandwiched by 2 Lance free throws. So, yay, right? I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know. It seems like this is a team that should be able to play fast and get up and down the court, and we can do that for like 3 minutes and then we stop. I don't know. I don't know what these guys are doing. It's tough to watch. I mean, because they don't seem engaged like teams of the past have. Like the replacements that were Paul George during that season where. We knew it was lost from the beginning, right? I mean, you don't see that level of passion out of these guys at all.
And Colson, what about you? What do
A
you?
couple of things that resonate to me. I think about that 2018 18 team with, we'd traded away Paul George and nobody thought we were going to be anything. And we were, assuming we were going to the lottery. And that collection of dudes played really hard and cared about each other and exceeded expectations, and we won 48 games. Like, that kind of thing interests me. I also think of the year after the same year of the brawl, where our same coach, the coach that we have now, Coach Carlisle, took a team of nobodies, guys off the street, and took us to 41 wins. Because this franchise was in disarray and everything was a disaster, and yet either the coach cared enough or the guys off the street cared enough, or there was something in the energy of the building. There was the Reggie Miller still there. I don't know what it was, but there was a way that we were not going to lose. And we didn't lose with scrubs. And now we have basketball players, legitimate basketball players. And we're going to lose more than guys off the street with the same coach? Like, I have a lot of problem. I feel like there is something fundamentally wrong. And I'm very nervous being a fan of this team going forward.
I mean, there is, and to me, the thing that's still wrong is just it's a crisis of leadership, right? Like, you keep pointing to Carlisle and saying, like, is this a coaching problem? Like, we're not prepared for this or XYZ or whatever it is. Like, is this a coaching thing? And to me, it may be, but I think that the larger issue is it's a leadership team thing. Like, who is the leader of this team? Like, and in some cases, it's the coach, right? Like, for instance, like a Thibodeau type team. Like, Thibodeau is the leader of the Knicks, right? Even though Julius Randle is probably the best player or whatever, right? Like, they play to their coach's personality right now. And then they'll get burnt out a year from now and they'll, quit on him. And then it'll be chaos and blah, 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 right? And so a coach can serve that role. I don't know that Carlisle is serving that role right now. I don't think he believes that it is his role. I think that he believes that, one of the players in that locker room should be the guy that's leading the charge and saying, like, okay, let's go do this. And, we've had this conversation for a few years now, basically ever since Oladipo went down with an injury. It's like, who is the leader of this team? Is it Sabonis? Is it Brogdon? Et cetera, et cetera.
Is it Miles Turner?
No.
It's not Miles Turner. That we can definitively say. It is not, nor has it ever been Miles Turner.
Oh, we used to fight for that. We used to hope that was the case. But I want to say that briefly that Harper made a really good point, I thought, last week, which was we didn't necessarily bring in Carlisle to fix our leadership issue and the emotional damage of these guys. Like, he's a basketball coach, right? And, like, if we had given him if we'd said to him as part of the pitch that you need to be either the leader of men in a way that, you're not comfortable with, or that, there is a leader of men on this roster and you just have to pull it out, he might have felt differently about coming to this franchise.
I don't know if that would have been a sticking point for him. I think that was a clear, from the outside, I think that was a clear issue with this team last year.
The issue was that we had a shitty coach last year, right? We had a coach that was emotionally abusing these guys and making them feel terrible about themselves. And so we just needed a positive father figure.
Well, but if you remember
clearly
last
that's
year,
not enough.
If you remember last year, Oladipo was still on the team, and so there was but he wasn't really playing, and so there was a question.
And he was one step out the door.
No, I know, and so there was a question of who was the leader on that team, right? And maybe it just needed a year to ride out, and like blah blah blah, and so Carlisle has been around a lot of NBA teams over the last 45 years or whatever, right? Like he has lived literally my lifetime in NBA circles, right? Like, so he recognizes these things as secondhand nature, I think, at this point. And so I think he knew that was an issue. And I think that it's not out of the job description of a coach to do at least some of that for his locker room, right? To say, like, I need to manage the egos in this room and come up with a group dynamic that is positive and productive for my team on the floor, right? And I think that, like everybody else in the world, it was assumed that Malcolm Brogdon, being called the president and being talked about as having all this great leadership skills, was the de facto leader. It was like the obvious choice to become the leader on the floor. Mm-hmm. And I think that maybe he assumed that mantle to some degree. But from what I'm seeing on the floor, like, he just doesn't...
It ain't working.
...engender the enthusiasm of his peers on the floor.
What I would say about him is that he's a very efficient basketball player. I think that he's a savvy, smart basketball player. He knows when to shoot and when to go to the basket, and he can give a solid pass to the other guy. Efficient isn't inspiring. It's useful on a team, but if he's your leader, this is how we got here, right?
Yeah, but you can be efficient and be a good leader, right? You can be not the key guy. You can be not the best player on your team and be the leader of that team. Like, look at the Phoenix Suns right now. Chris Paul is the leader of that team. He scores like 12 points a game. Like, he doesn't care. Like, he's beyond the point where he needs to score buckets or take over games. But he sets the table for everyone. And obviously he's a very extreme example. Like, he's one of the best point guards ever and probably one of the best team leaders ever, right? Because he manages every aspect of the game, and he's probably psychopathic to some degree, right?
Oh, he's a crazy person, for sure.
But, can we have a modicum of that from Malcolm Brogdon? Can I see him going over and talking to Chris Duarte and being like, all right, here's what we need to do, or like bringing the guys together to have a huddle, like after a free throw or something like that, just say like, all right, what's going to happen on this next play? Here's what we're going to do. Like, I don't know.
Well, this reminds me of the thing that Bill Simmons often talks about, which is that there's no way that Isaiah Thomas is not in the top 5 point guards of all time, but his stats don't show it up. But he says he watched this guy, and he knew that for 3.5 quarters he was going to make everybody else better. He was going to spend his time not picking his spots, but figuring out what the other, what the defense was doing, what his players needed, what their confidence was about. And then if they were down, he could go nuts in the fourth quarter. And so his career stats are only 18 points a game or whatever, And so people will look back on it and say, he's not the best point guard of all time. What I feel like Brogdon does very well is he understands when he can get his or he can hand it off. But he's not making us better. He's not spending 3.5 quarters building up the other guys, the guy that's not confident, get him an easy layup, or feeding it to the guy that's got a mismatch because it's going to make him better, Like, I think Brogdon is a really smart player for his own game, but I'm not sure that he has it figured out for the team game. Yeah. And so can we rely on him as our team leader? Or can we just rely on him as an efficient point guard?
I mean, obviously we could use a good point guard. I mean, that's for sure, right? I think it's telling that, when Karlev first got here, he's trying on like Justin Holiday as the team leader, right? Like talking him up, you know what I mean?
Right, for sure.
And I don't know. Like I said, I can't really figure out what is going on with these guys, right? It doesn't seem like it should be that big of a task for these guys to get together and be like, look, we're really struggling. Let's get our heads together and figure this thing out, right? Like, it's not rocket science to realize that something's very wrong. But I can't tell if these guys just full out hate each other or what the deal is, right?
Yeah, was there anybody that called a team meeting at some point?
We used to have team meetings all the time, and we used to make jokes about how we were going to have another team meeting the next time we won or lost. We haven't heard about a team meeting in 2 years.
Right.
I mean, now would be the time. 13 games under 500 and 1-9 in your last 10, right? I mean,
what did it say? 2 weeks ago or more would have been the time.
Yeah.
Or now it's time to just roll over and, show your belly.
Well, but no player is going to do that, right? Like,
what are we doing right now?
Well, I mean, that is exactly what we're doing, but nobody's going to...
Who is getting on the ground and
nobody's
who's getting
call a
that?
team meeting and say, hey, guys, let's roll over and show our bellies now. Like,
but right now,
just
nobody is
out.
getting...
You can go fishing.
No, right now,
It's
nobody's
fine.
getting that rebound. Nobody's getting that loose ball. Nobody's doing it. So if you want to have a team meeting about doing those things, a little too late, probably.
Yeah. It seems like Delmas would be the guy to call that team meeting, but I don't know... I don't know that he's like has that personality or whatever. I don't know.
It doesn't seem to me that he does.
But he's like I've talked about this before. I think like he's the only guy that gives a shit. Like he's the dude.
Yeah, and it's strange to me that he's not more vocal about that stuff, right? I mean, he's clearly a smart guy. Like, he understands the game, right?
Yep.
So it's always surprising to me that he hasn't stepped up in a more, vocal leadership type of role, because clearly it's super lacking on this squad. But I don't know
he
if
was like
that
scarred by Russell Westbrook his rookie season or something.
right. But I don't know whether that speaks to Domantas Sabonis not wanting to be in that role, whether he doesn't want to be in Indiana and he's just like biding his time until he can go someplace else.
No, I don't see that. I see a guy who just wants to play good basketball. He just basically, the moment Lance came back, he just started talking about Lance. Like, when he's got a guy that he likes to play with, he used to talk about McDermott all the time. Like, there's guys that he grooves with, and he just wants to do that. I don't think he cares about where he's doing it. I think he just wants to play good basketball. So what I'm saying is, I'm not saying he's not committed to Indiana. I'm saying he's committed to basketball in general. The fact that our franchise came out and said you're on the trade block maybe makes him a little less dedicated. But I think he just likes playing good basketball.
Well, I mean, he's succeeded,
and he's not interested in like having a shaping role in like a succeeding team. Like, he just wants to ball and like.
I think he just wants to ball.
Okay.
I mean, like, look, how many people have you met? We have been in work environments our entire adult lives for the last 20 years. How many people do you know that aren't interested in being leaders, but they want to be a cog in a machine?
I mean, most of them, but like most of them don't have extraordinary talent, right?
Yeah.
Like,
and the level of competitiveness that it takes to go out and do what
exactly.
he does all day, every day. Like, it's hard for me to believe that dude doesn't want to win, because why else do all the work, right?
That's right. You hit it on the
I
head
think
right
he
there.
wants to win.
Yeah.
I think he wants to win. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that I'm not sure that he wants to lead a locker room.
But like, typically,
those are different things.
In a workplace or on a team that I've been on, like, the dudes that are like the most competitive are also the ones that are like, come on, get your shit together. Like, we're losing and this is not acceptable. And like, it's funny because I sense that from Domas on the floor. Like, I feel like
you see him yell at people.
Right. But it doesn't seem to either carry the weight or, I don't know.
There's definitely some level of
undercut at some point.
Accountability that just doesn't exist on this team, right? And
right.
I'm with you. It is confusing because it seems like, I mean, again, Domas should be this role, and he seems like a pretty cool, chill guy, all things considered, right? Like, he seems like the type of person that people would, readily get in behind. And he holds himself accountable. That's part of the reason why he's as good as he is, right? He works hard and recognizes his mistakes and tries to improve. But yeah, it just makes it all the more confusing that he hasn't adopted that role, or really even been just shoved into it in some way by Malcolm Brogdon or somebody else who doesn't want to do it, or Miles Turner.
Well, but we've talked about this before. There's no chemistry between Brogdon and Sabonis. Like the thing is like Sabonis is giving us he is an offensive threat. The way that he can get to the basket, the way that he can also distribute. He's a defensive presence by the rebounds he gets. Now, does he get burnt on the perimeter all the time? Does he get burnt at the goal all the time? Yes. But you add these three things together, what he does defensively on the boards, what he does offensively, for himself, and what he does for other people, you can pretty run an offense for him almost like you would a Nikola Jokic, right? Like, I mean, this guy has a ton of talent. If I am the guy that's coming in and saying I'm the leader, if I'm the president, what is my job? My job is to create chemistry with the most talented person on the floor. And there is zero chemistry between Malcolm Brogdon and Domantas Sabonis.
Yeah. I wonder
Whose fault is that? Is that coaches? Is that Sabonis's? Is that Brogdon's?
I mean, I feel like Sabonis has chemistry with like the the guy that mops up the floor after he falls down. Like, it's not Sabonis' fault. Like, that dude can play with it. Like you say, he's just like
He's a
the baller.
baller.
Like, he'll play with anybody.
He's a baller,
Like,
man.
He just doesn't care. So
He absolutely loves playing with Lance Stevenson. He just loves it.
I
He's
think he
talked
likes
about
playing with Justin Holiday.
It's
I
because
think he
Lance
likes
is a
playing
baller.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly. I wonder, to get back to his like leadership prowess or whatever. I don't know enough about. I haven't been on enough basketball teams, but I wonder if there's something about like big guys in general are not typically like put into leadership type positions or something like that on a basketball
You got to
team.
throw him the ball. It's a different thing.
Right, exactly, right? So like somebody else is sort of in charge.
Point guards are normally the coach on the floor.
Right. Like Tim Duncan was clearly the leader of those amazing, Spurs teams or whatever.
Okay, well, he was the last
Bill
line
Russell
of defense.
was the greatest winner of all time. He was
Right,
the
last
leader
line of
those-
defense.
Right, like,
Sure. Okay.
Karl Malone had plenty of help, but he was certainly a leader on his team.
Right.
Yeah, some Stockton vibes.
Olajuwon,
but yeah.
I think, was considered one of the leaders of that.
Oh my goodness.
Alonzo
My
Mourning.
favorite NBA player of all time.
Yeah. Okay, so there goes that theory.
Well, no. But I think this is a small number of guys that we've just picked out.
Yeah.
Right. Like, I think it takes a certain type of person to be a leader at that size.
For sure.
Because you're not bringing the ball up all the time. You're not making the decisions.
Right, but yeah, I mean, yeah.
And he's also not a defensive anchor. Most of those other guys that we mentioned were
Right.
defensive
Everybody
anchors.
else we mentioned, everyone else we mentioned were defensive anchors.
Good point.
I mean, I wonder on some level if, maybe Brogdon and Sabonis' games just don't fit very well together, right? I mean, I just kind of feel like they're both a bit of ISO players, right? Like, the Brogdon-Sabonis pick and roll is not feared around the league right now.
Right.
Not at all.
So we have to fix that by fixing their game or by trading one of them.
I mean, you're not going to change their game at this point, I don't think.
Yeah, I think those stripes can't change that cat stripes.
I mean, Sabonis in general is not a great pick and roll or pick and pop kind of guy. Like, he's a playmaker himself, right?
Yeah, he's a
I mean, he's
playmaker.
okay, but like, he's better with the ball in his hands. Like, you want him
Look,
making decisions. Like,
basketball is very simple, right? I mean, the offense is forcing the defense to make a decision. Okay? And when the defense makes a decision, you take advantage of it. And that's what pick and rolls are. That's what passing the ball is. That's what skip passes is. All of it is about throwing off the defense so you can have a wide open look. If I have a talented player like Domantas Sabonis, offensively like utterly gifted, and I also have a guy who won Rookie of the Year, who is incredibly efficient at the perimeter, those two should be able to figure out how to break down a defense.
yeah.
And the fact
combined
that they
with
can't,
a coach that has been around the league for 45
right?
years. Like,
Who's won championships? Like, yes, this should work. So why does it not?
I don't know. I'm sure this is why Donnie Walsh's Scotch habit has reinvigorated these days. All right, we're not going to solve this, so let's put a button in this or a pin in this here, and
We're gonna solve it. Don't
yeah,
lie to me.
It may
We'll
solve
figure it out.
itself, but I don't think we're going to solve it. But
We'll figure it out at some point.
let's do. Joey's not here, but let's do a quick statistic of the Samana.
Joey, stat of the week.
This week. This one came to me from the Enforcer. John Harper sent me this thing about, which I'd never heard about before. So it's this thing called DESI, which stands for the Dark Energy Spectroscopic Instrument. And I don't understand the science behind how it works, but basically the goal of this project is to map all of the galaxies in the universe. And so far, they have mapped 7.5 million galaxies across the universe.
And they're adding 1 million a month.
And that's about 10% of the expected total, or something like that.
Okay, so when you say you map the galaxy, what does that look like?
So they are like shooting light beams out into space and capturing light from
Other suns.
tens of billions of light years away, or something like that, somehow. 5 billion light years away.
Jesus.
And they can basically say, okay, here's a galaxy, here's a galaxy, here's a galaxy. And they have these plots, we'll link to this, I guess, that say, okay, here's this far and here's this far. And each point of light is a galaxy. And it's just like dazzling numbers of lights. And within each one of those lights is 100 billion stars or something like that. That's just blows my mind.
Bonkers.
It's crazy.
And they're, you're looking back in time, and then they're kind of figuring out where everything is based on the redshift. It's pretty neat.
Do you understand how this works, Harper, at all?
Like DESI itself?
Yeah.
Not really. I didn't dig that deeply into it. I mean, I know it's like a bunch of just fiber optic tubes or whatever organized by little tiny robots.
Yeah. So apparently there's 5,000 robots that control these individual optical fibers whose positions are accurate to within 10 microns.
That's what she said.
Which is less than the thickness of a human hair. It's about the width of a nucleus in a cell. 10 microns. For the biologists.
Yeah.
Out there. So yeah, this is apparently there's lots of galaxies out there. And so when you see numbers like this, you're like, oh yeah, there's definitely life, intelligent life somewhere else out there.
For sure.
Like there's no way there's not.
And 35 million galaxies.
Jason, you don't want to get into this because I have a ton of thoughts on this.
Okay.
I've studied all the stuff about why we are not connected with intelligent life, so that'll be a different podcast.
I think we've briefly gotten into this before.
I mean,
yeah.
largely, my favorite example is that to create interstellar travel, you have to create AI, and AI will ultimately murder all humans.
Right.
So, there you go. That's why, yeah. Whee!
There are lots of people who think that intelligent life has contacted us. They just don't care that much about us.
It's also fair. We're not that cool. Have you met the Pacers?
No, this is pretty cool stuff. Pretty wild, wacky stuff. Okay, so
Solid work.
Moving on. Finally, to close out this week's episode, let's do an Undegoogleable. Colson, what can we help you with this week?
Oh, are we doing under Googleables?
That was the plan.
Super excited.
You told us we had to, so.
He said we signed up for it.
In the end, it's going to be better and more true than Google can give you.
So I actually got in an argument today with my roommate, and I was mentioning that I needed a toboggan to go out and shovel the snow. I needed a hat, sort of like a knit cap, and I didn't have that on me at the time. I needed someone to produce a toboggan for me so I could go shovel the snow while it was snowing. And she said, what are you talking about? A toboggan is a sled.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, I agree. I think both things are true. I think a toboggan is a sled and a toboggan is a hat. And then I didn't Google it.
Cool story.
So why would she think a toboggan is a sled, and why do I think a toboggan is a hat? And why did I agree with her that they're both true when they're the same name and the same thing? And I was really angry, and I went to bed mad.
You're gonna have to fork over $150 an hour to answer that last question. Why you did some action, but I have a vague feeling that both are true as well. I don't know why that is.
What's a toboggan to you?
I never
if I said
call
toboggan. What's your toboggan?
A sled. It's more a sled to me than a hat. I have never called a hat a toboggan.
I've also never
I'm
called
actually
a hat a
surprised
toboggan.
that you asked for a toboggan and we're asking for a hat.
What kind of sled are you talking about? Toboggan.
One with
See,
rails.
there's a ton of issues here.
I'm thinking of one with like your classic one with the 2 rails and then wood slats on the top and then a curved. Oh wait, actually maybe it's just flat on the bottom with a curved thing.
Flat on the thing with the curved thing. Yeah, that's what I think of.
Yeah, I
don't think of rails. Yeah.
Not the rails. Yeah. Harper, what do you agree?
I agree with that. Yeah, I've never heard
That's
of
a
a
toboggan.
hat being referred to as a toboggan before. That is absolute news
What?
to me.
You and I have spent so much time together, and I've referred to things. We spent so much time in Minnesota when we put on hats. It's a
I
toboggan.
don't even think I
The
wore
little
hats
thing with
back
the
then,
little-
man. I'm not a
No,
milliner,
like,
all right? I don't know.
It's a knit hat with a little puffy thing on the top.
I definitely
That's a
don't wear
toboggan.
hats with
That's
puffy
a
things on
toboggan.
them.
The
I
thing
know
with-
you
the
don't.
thing
Maybe
with the
that's why you
ball
don't
is a
remember it.
toboggan?
That's why
Okay.
I'm
little
not
puffy
saying you're
ball on the
wrong.
top
I'm
is
just
a
saying I've
toboggan.
never heard of it.
I'm just saying I agree that you probably never heard that phrase because you never wore that stupid hat, but I definitely did.
So in Canada, isn't that called? That's like a toque, right?
That sounds
I don't know
very
what you're saying.
Inuit.
That's a weird. Yeah,
It's
exactly.
a hat. I think,
like
is a winter
Algonquin.
hat. Yeah, it's a toque, I think. Or maybe it's a toboggan. I don't know. That's strange. Where do we think this word originated? This also seems like an Algonquin word or something.
Mhm.
Or like
I agree.
So it's American Indian,
That would be my guess.
or
sounds like it to me.
or it's. I mean, that sounds Frenchish or Germanish to me.
Toboggan.
I
It's a strange
suppose I could
construction.
see that.
Toboggan, like like the very very German toboggan.
I could maybe buy German. That's
Very
a French,
French.
accent, but
For me to poop on toboggan. No, I think it's French. I'm going with French. I think the French they like the snow.
Do they?
I don't know.
yeah, they like to ski. They like to go to the Alps and ski, for sure.
Yeah, they're in the Alps. Ooh, no. I think it's even better than this. I think they're the French in the Americas. They're hanging out in the snow and they're coming up with words.
All right.
Toboggan.
It sounds very
I want to wear a
French.
hat. I want to wear a hat. Because, the thing is, they're real into hats, man. You know the French hats.
The chapeaus and the berets.
Yeah,
and
exactly,
whatnot.
exactly. And so, at some point, you get, a really knit hat. I mean, they're like, toboggan. And we're in the middle of Americas in the, I don't know, in the Rocky Mountains.
Why did they name a hat after a sled?
But no, that's what I'm saying. I don't think they named it after a sled. I think the sled was named after the hat.
Why did someone name a sled after a hat?
Somebody named the sled after a hat. Yeah.
Why wouldn't you name a sled after that? So if your hat is about being cold, and then you go build a thing to
But that just
sled
seems
on.
confusing. Now you're just
agree.
creating confusion.
The entire thing is confusing. This is why
that
it's
sounds very
ungoogleable.
French.
None of it makes sense.
Yeah.
Why is it the same way? Am I wrong that they're not the same thing? You agreed with me earlier that they're the same thing.
I have no idea.
I have.
You think a toboggan is a sled
I
and
know a
also a
toboggan
hat?
is a sled.
You agree with that?
I-
You agree with that? That a toboggan is also a sled and a
I've
hat?
heard people refer to hats as toboggans, but I
So
don't know
you're
if it's
s-
a common term or a misappropriation of the term.
So you're saying that I'm lying to you?
No,
I mean, that does
I'm
seem
not
like a
saying-
really
when did I
high
say that?
probability outcome to me.
I think a toboggan is a hat and not a sled. Although I agree that it's a sled. This is the conversation that I have with my roommate. I agree that it's probably the same. It's probably regional. But like, I think the hat came first from the French because they love the hats. And toboggan. And then we get to a sled somehow.
Okay, I'm gonna go sled first. American
wait,
Indian.
wait. I think it's sled
Okay, before we
first.
do this, I need an era.
Sled first. American Indian.
Yeah, I think
Era?
it's we stole it from the American Indians. So
Those are.
beginning in the 1600s, 1700s.
I mean,
1600.
that's when it landed in English, right? It may have been in use for 10,000 years
Right.
previously, right? Because they're pre-literate societies for the most part.
Exactly.
But
So toboggan is an American Indian phrase.
That's our guess.
That's what I'm
We're gonna
guessing.
get.
Yeah.
All right, I'm guessing French.
And you're going French.
French.
When?
1800s when they're out in Canada.
No, 1800, 18. No. I think it's like beaver trade. You know, like I think it's America. I think it's Alaska. I think it's Alaska beaver trade.
So
what is that?
1800s.
Nah, 1700s.
Okay, sure.
Late 17, early 1800s. That's what I'm going with. I'm thinking Alaska beaver trade. They're sledding and wearing hats. Chapeaus.
Toboggan.
All right.
Noun. Long flat-bottom sled. 1829. From Canadian French, toboggané. Toboggan.
Ah.
From an Algonquian language.
Oh, Jesus. I said Algonquin.
Such as Malicete. What?
Ooh. So, okay. So basically, I'm
Knick-knack
totally right.
is what I'm saying.
It came from like northern France and Algonquins.
So we're saying Canadian French.
Canadian French.
Northern France.
That would be Western France, if anything. As an American English colloquial for a type of long woolen cap, it is recorded from 1929, presumably because one wore such a cap while tobogganing.
What?
Okay, so
So if I'm a French man riding a sled, I'm riding a toboggan. But if I wear a chapeau, it's also a toboggan?
if you're in the American South, is what I'm reading.
What? There isn't snow in the American South.
Right, exactly.
So that's stupid.
Hold on, I'm getting there. It's a
It's
very
actually-
long article on Atlas Obscura
Yeah.
that gets into
It's actually short for toboggan cap. So
Okay. This is how we get it confused. So I would wear a knit cap with a ball on it when I...
Doesn't necessarily have to have a ball on top of it.
Jason. Fuck you.
oh wow, bringing the heat
The
about his
toboggan has a
toboggan
ball
cap.
on the cap.
Okay.
Now I have to put the
Because you got so salty about your toboggan cap. Now we got
I
the
did. I
explicit
know. I'm
warning
saying.
on our...
Look. There's a ball on the cap. Is all I'm saying, Jason. Just back off.
So, the divergence between two forms of toboggan is relatively easy to track. The use of toboggan to mean sled dates back to 1829, a French-Canadian adaptation of an Algonquin word. Because of the freezing conditions, toboggan riders often wore knit hats to keep them warm. These hats soon became known as toboggan hats. but since at least 1929, the second word has been dropped. In the American South, where snow is rare, the connection between toboggan and sled faded, and the primary definition of toboggan thus became hat.
It can also be a verb.
Wow.
To use or coast on a toboggan, or to fall rapidly, as prices or one's fortune.
So you could just toboggan out of that shit? So, okay, one question. All of this feels very truthy to me, but I'm concerned about what did the French steal from the Indians?
They derive...
What are they calling sleds or hats, or like what was the thing that the French stole?
Right. So the French toboggan derives from Algonquin word, probably of the Micmac language, tepecan or dabogan. It doesn't really say what those words mean. Let me see.
Okay. But you assume it's a sled or a hat?
I'm assuming it's a
This is sled, yeah. So
Okay.
this article on dictionary.com says the toboggan from Micmac is equivalent to unrecorded Proto-Algonquin wedapai, to drag a cord. So they may have pulled the sleds with a cord or something like that.
And there's like pictures of like toboggans being pulled by sled dogs.
That's what I watched today all day. You got kids, the parents are walking their kids down the street in the sleds. So.
Out there tobogganing. With the toboggans on their noodles.
Wearing their toboggans on their heads. This is why it was a question, and I know more than I did before.
Yes, you know a lot more than you did before. And that's why this is better even than what Google can give you.
Yep.
All right. Well, thank you for listening to my charming voice this week, fans. Hopefully Joey will be back with us next week. Between now and then, you can find us on Twitter. We are at Undebeatables. We're on Facebook.com/TheUndebeatables. You can go to our website, TheUndebeatables.com, and use a contact form. Or you can fire up your rocket mail and send an email to shoutout@theundebeatables.com. And if you want to go to our website, you can put in an order for the Last Medium t-shirt, and we will promptly toboggan it to your doorstep.
So that means we're going to put it in a hat and throw it at them?
Exactly. It's a hat trick.
Oh, well done. Well played, sir. For the architect Donnie Walsh, who I think of all the time. When I go to sleep, I think about how he'd make this better. I miss him. I wish he'd call me. And the once and always coach, Bobby Silk Leonard. Turn out the lights. The party's over.
Thought he was going to fall asleep halfway through.
Yeah. We almost lost him there.
He's like snowed in his basement. just barely hanging on. Doesn't quite know what day it is.
Party's over.